Hi class, in this video I'm going to give a quick overview of chapter 2 from our Building Management Skills textbook on learning about yourself. Now, the chapter starts off talking about how difficult it is to actually learn about yourself, and this is because we have a distorted view of ourselves. We think we know ourselves really well, but it turns out studies have shown that the way we see ourselves versus the way we actually are and how we're seen by others is not the same. So it's distorted, but it's also often distorted in our favor. So we think we are better at certain things than we actually are. Now, this makes it really difficult to objectively understand our own characteristics. So to resolve this, we need to go through a process of self-inquiry to figure out what we're really like. And this chapter is going to talk about how we can do that. Now, in developing this self-awareness, there's different areas that we can look into to become more self-aware. There's our personality traits, beliefs, emotions, our values, our strengths, limitations, and appreciating how our own personal patterns affect the people around us. Now, the reason this is also important is because self-awareness is critical to being a good manager. Anything you read about management or leadership will always talk about self-awareness. Before you can lead others, you have to lead yourself. And to lead yourself, you have to be self-aware of yourself, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and the way, kind of what your patterns of behavior are, so you can use that effectively to become better at leading yourself, and therefore also leading others. All right, skip ahead to this. So getting back to what I was just talking about, how important self-awareness is. As it says here, a primary characteristic of effective leaders, they know who they are and who they stand for. You might be able to relate to this in your own life, that we trust people more who are steady in their beliefs and actions, and we know what to expect from them. The book even talks about how that there can be someone we don't necessarily agree with their values or behaviors, but if we at least know what to expect from them, we'll appreciate that more because there's more certainty to it. So by making sure we totally understand ourselves or better understand ourselves and can remain more constant, we create more certainty in those around us and become a better manager, because others know what to expect from us. So the book gives 3 different ways that we can enhance our self-awareness. We can solicit feedback, we can perform self-diagnosis or self-disclosure. So soliciting feedback is where we ask others for feedback on our performance or job satisfaction. So we can learn from others by seeing how they see us. We can get a better feeling for what reality is really like versus looking at it only from our own distorted self-perception. Next is self-diagnosis. So in this is where you do you reflect personally, but you do it in a more structured manner. Some people may do this through maybe a daily journal, or just spending some time every day just to think about the day and the actions they took, the behaviors they made, the impacts of those, and just trying to regularly think about how their day went, how they behaved, and what the impacts were. And then finally is self-disclosure. So this is a little bit like soliciting feedback, but rather than asking for feedback, this is where you share kind of personal things with others, your fears, your thoughts, your emotions, and see what other people's reactions are to them. And this can teach you a lot about yourself because you learn their reactions to those things, and it helps shape your own perception of yourself, helping you get a better self-awareness of all those things. So soliciting feedback, asking others, self-diagnosis, which is self-reflection, and then self-disclosure, which is sharing things with others to get their not their feedback, just get their perception on it, and you'll see how they react to it. Alrighty. All right, so the book has this concept it'll talk about called the Johari window of self-awareness. It has 4 quadrants. So at the top left corner, you have known to self, and over to the right of that, you have not known to self. So, and then the other axis, you have known to others and not known to others. So what this does is it uses those 4 different criteria to create 4 different quadrants. So the top left in the number 1 quadrant of open, these are things that are, when you're in a group setting, that is, known to yourself and known to others. And this is the quadrant you want to try to increase. You want, this whole idea of the Johari window is to increase alignment and transparency between you and the group you're with. So you want to increase the number of things that are known to self and known to others. Therefore, you're in alignment and have transparency with them. Now, the things that fall into other quadrants that you hope to move to the open quadrant, first of all, going to the second quadrant of blind, these are things that are not known to yourself, but they are known to others. So these are blind spots you have, and the others can help you figure out, one way through, of course, through soliciting feedback, of course. Number 3, the hidden quadrant. These are things that you know about yourself that others don't know. So these are things you haven't shared. So this could be resolved through the self-disclosure we talked about. And the last one is unknown. These are things that are not known to yourself or to others. So these are things that about yourself that you haven't figured out yet, and no one else has figured out yet either. But learning those things can be beneficial. So the idea is to get as many things out of these other 3 quadrants as possible into the open quadrant to create that alignment and transparency with the group around you. All right, then a large part of the chapter talks about key individual differences, and it breaks it into 4 different areas of self. We're all different in our personality, our thinking style, our belief and values, and our interaction with the world. So the chapter has a section on all 4 of these and how we can evaluate those things and become more self-aware. So let's start with the first one, personality. So personality is a set of unseen characteristics and thought processes that underlie a relatively stable pattern of behavioral response to people, ideas, and circumstances. So it's kind of it's a pattern of how you behave. That's your personality. And there's a lot of different personality tests out there, but one of them that has the most research behind it is this one called the Big 5 Model Personality. And it has 5 different areas: extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, emotional stability, and openness to experience. And as the next slide I think I'll mention, these represent a continuum, meaning that for each of these 5 things, you would fall somewhere on this continuum from left to right. So like extroversion, if you're low in extroversion, you're quiet, withdrawn, and unassertive. If you're high in extroversion, you'd be outgoing, energetic, and gregarious, but you might be kind of in the center or more to one side than the other. There's agreeableness. Low agreeableness is aloof, easily irritated. High agreeableness is warm, considerate, good-natured. Conscientiousness, it's a hard word to say. Low conscientiousness is impulsive, carefree, undisciplined. And high is responsible, dependable, and goal-oriented. For emotional stability, if you're low in that, you'd be moody, tense, and insecure. If you're high, confident, positive, and calm. And then openness to experience, if you're low in that, you'd have a narrow field of interest. And on the high end, you'd be imaginative, curious, open to new ideas. So, as I said, on all 5 of these, you would fall somewhere on the spectrum from left to right. Now, as it says here, you could be any level in each of those. I just said that. One thing I want to point out here is this line here about consciousness. It's the one dimension that is important for success in all types of jobs and careers. So this one here, consciousness, while anyone can fall anywhere on any of these 5 things, this is the one that being high on helps in almost all careers. And if you look at what that means, it's being responsible, dependable, and goal-oriented. All right, next of those 4 things on this chart here was thinking style. So let's go to that. Skip that. All right, so here's this concept the book puts forward called the whole brain model. And it compares this to previously, a lot of people thought about people being left-brained and right-brained. The whole brain model tries to take that a step further and breaks it, the idea of the thinking styles of people into 4 different areas. Now, in the top left corner, upper left, quadrant A, these people who prefer this thinking style, it's kind of their go-to. They're more logical, analytical, fact-based, quantitative. And I'm going to reference the book here on these because there's some good stuff in the book here I want to add. So these people like to deal with numbers and technical matters. To them, opinions and feelings are generally not considered as important as facts. So they don't care about opinions. They're all about facts. All right, moving on to quadrant 2. So these people are more organized, sequential, planned, and detailed. So these people like plans and procedures and getting things done on time. Moving to quadrant C, more interpersonal, feelings-based, kinesthetic, emotional. So these people are sensitive to others and enjoying interacting with and teaching others. They're typically emotional and expressive, outgoing and supportive. They are concerned with people's feelings more than facts and procedures. So it's kind of, you can tell us this big difference than the one in the top left corner. They're less worried about facts and more worried about feelings. And then finally, moving to the last quadrant, that's based around being holistic, intuitive, integrating, and synthesizing. These people are usually visionary and imaginative. They like to speculate, break rules, take risks, and they're curious and enjoy experimentation, playfulness, and change. So those are 4 different thinking styles. Ideally, you want to try to tap in personally to as many some of the thinking styles of all 4 quadrants, but you are naturally going to be drawn to and likely to use and prefer one of these 4 quadrants. All right, so going back to this thing again, next is interaction with the world. So for that, the book talks about Jungian types, which Carl Jung was a famous psychologist, and his work led to something called the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator Assessment. So this is another personality test. It's very popular, but it's not as well researched as the big 5 personality tests we discussed a minute ago, this one right here. But there is some similarities. But this is a great one for learning about yourself and how you interact with the world.